Hello, and welcome to the Badhumanist look at Fury Warrior. So again, after a bit of a break, going to be finishing off the Warrior spec here with the Fury Warrior. As always, I'm going to be going through the different passives and abilities, talking through the talent trees, different possible builds, show a bit of the rotation, take a look at how the damage is going to be looking here, at least distribution. Again, final numbers are not tuned, of course, but again, we can at least see currently where the distribution of some of the abilities are. And then again, kind of wrap up with some overall summaries, hopes for the future, but let's get right into it. So let's start here with our passives. Of course, Titan's Grip, the thing that's now come to define Fury Warrior, allows you to dual wield a pair of two-handed weapons. The mastery here is increase the damage done while enraged. So again, the more mastery you have, the more damage you do while enraged. Enraged the passive, so again, becoming enraged increases your damage done by 51%, haste by 25%, and your move speed by 10% for 4 seconds. Your Bloodthirst ability has a 30% chance to trigger it. Your Rampage will always enrage you. Whirlwind, again, you could do a Whirlwind, strikes a bunch of enemies, does physical damage, causes your next, again, that's a talent part, so ignore that. Victory Rush, again, strikes a target, causing some damage, healing you, only usable within 20 seconds after you kill an enemy. Taunt, again, taunts the target to attack you. As always, there's a talent. Recklessness, main cooldown here. You go Berserk, increases all rage generation by 100%, that basically means doubles them, and granting your abilities 20% increased critical strike chance for 10 seconds. Rampage, main ability here, no, it is talented. It would normally be 85 rage. It rages you and unleashes a series of 4 brutal strikes for a total of X damage. Again, this is also buffed by a talent. Rallying Cry, 3-minute cooldown, again increases all raid members' health by 15%. Raging Blow, 6-second recharge, reduced by haste. A mighty blow with both weapons that deal a total of X damage. Raging Blow has a 20% chance to instantly reset its own cooldown. It does generate 12 rage. It does have 2 charges. Pummel is our interrupt. Piercing Howl snares enemies. Intimidating shout, causes them to cower in fear. Heroic Throw, again, throw your weapon to big threat. Heroic Leap, jumping around. Execute, again, attempt to finish off a wounded target, causing a bunch of damage, only usable with enemies that are less than 20% health, generates 20 rage. It is, of course, reduced by haste cooldown. Enrage Regeneration, reduces damage taken by 30%, and Bloodthirst restores an additional 20% health, usable while stunned, so again, that can be quite nice for self-healing. Charge, same old thing. Bloodthirst, assault the target with a bloodthirsty craze, dealing physical damage and restoring 5% of your health. It does generate 8 rage. About a 4-second cooldown, again reduced by haste. More than 4 actually, but reduced by haste. Berserker Rage, again, this removes immunity to fear, sap, and incap. Battle Shout, again, 10% increased attack power to all raid members. Alright, let's shift into the 15 talent row. So, War Machine, your auto attacks generate 10% more rage. This is valuable because, again, you are dual wielding, so again, you're having more auto attacks going off than, say, Arms Warrior, for example. But I find that more of the rage generation is coming outside of this. It's an okay talent, fine passive. Endless Rage, gains 6 rage whenever you enrage. So, again, anytime you enrage, whether it be off of Bloodthirst or again Rampage, you're gaining extra rage. Again, that, by the way, is buffed by Recklessness, so again you'd be 12 rage when you're enraging while under the effects of Recklessness. Fresh Meat, so Bloodthirst has a increased chance to trigger enrage and heals you for more there. I just found that Endless Rage was the most useful. It really allowed you to get more rage to get more Rampages off, and I'll talk about how some of the synergies, there's a lot of synergies about the talents here, so I'll talk about those in a second. Double Time increases the number of charges on charge and reduces its cooldown, so you can charge more. Impending Victory, again, I just don't get this talent. So it costs 10 rage, you attack the target doing damage, 30-second cooldown, and it heals you. So yeah, if you need to be able to heal yourself every 30 seconds, sure. Yeah. Stormbolt hurls your weapon at an enemy, causing physical damage and stunning for 4 seconds. Again, in this row, again, I think that the Double Time or Stormbolt, I think Stormbolt, honestly, is probably the most useful. Having a 4-second stun is quite valuable, and it's a range stun, nonetheless, 20-yard range, so I do think that's probably the most valuable. If there's a fight that requires you to charge around a lot, of course, Double Time will have its value. I mean, Impending Victory, I'm sure it has its place. I just can't think of any situation for either Mythic Plus or rating where this would be any more valuable than anything else because you're already getting enough victory rushes with killing things in Mythic Plus. So, 45 row. So you have Inner Rage. Raging Blows cooldown is reduced by a second and damage increased by 20%. Sudden Death. Your attacks have a chance to reset the cooldown Execute and make it usable. And then Furious Slash. Aggressively strike with your offhand weapon for 500 damage and increase your haste, stacking at 3. Now, this row is interesting. And it's a good choice row. One of those rows where I was really like, I wonder which one I'd want to take here. Damage-wise across the 3 is relatively even. Again, there's definitely different builds because certain talents make others stronger or weaker. Inner Rage, again, really makes Raging Blow super strong. It becomes one of your highest damaging abilities because, again, it's just being used so frequently. And again, it does a lot of damage. Sudden Death, again, allows you to be executing more often. Now, there's a bit of an RNG here. Again, Execute's super strong, of course. It does generate a good bit of rage, and this gives you Executes throughout the fight. So if you like that extra kind of proc playstyle, it's already enough, in my opinion. But if you want more of that, Sudden Death can do that for you. Furious Slash almost seems like it's what they want you to take. And what I mean by that is normally you actually use Whirlwind as like a filler in your rotation. And this does more damage. It's just single target. Sorry, Furious Strike. Does more damage, just single target. Generates about the same amount of rage. But it does give you that basically 6% haste up almost all the time. So it gives you something to do. It just feels a little bit better than Whirlwind. However, there is some talents we'll get to later on that actually make Whirlwind a bit more viable. 60 row, Furious Charge. Again, Charge also increases your healing for the next Bloodthirst. Bounding Stride, again, allows you to jump around more frequently. War Paint, you take reduced damage while Enrage is active. Very simple row. It's all about kind of like survivability to some degree. Again, Bounding Stride is more movement, obviously, whereas those two are more survival. I almost wonder if they should switch Impending Victory and Bounding Stride here, just because then you have the two movement effects. I mean, technically speaking, you could take both of these, or even both of those, and really help buff Charge or something. But again, it's just utility. 75 row, Carnage. So this is a talent time before. Rampage costs 10 less. It's normally 85. Now it's 75 and deals 50% more increased damage. Massacre allows Execute to be usable on targets below 35% health. And then Frothing Berserker. Rampage now costs 95 rage, so 10 more than baseline, and increases your damage done by 10% and haste by 5%. I found that Carnage was kind of beating out Frothing Berserker in general here. Just the ability to get them off more and do more damage with them was more of a benefit than the buff that Frothing Berserker gives you. I can't really test Massacre's value here, how it would compare with something like Carnage. The extra 15% health, of course, as I mentioned in the arms video. The increased, the longer the fight, I should say, the more value this would have. Again, on targets that are lasting, a minute, not very valuable. 10 minutes, more valuable, because it allows the amount of time in Enrage to increase by a larger amount. 90 row. Now, Meat Cleaver is interesting. So Whirlwind has a 10% chance to Enrage and generate an additional 1 rage per target hit. So this actually allows the Whirlwind use as like your filler to be somewhat more beneficial, especially with Endless Rage, because now whenever you, again, 10% chance, but whenever you Whirlwind, you have a chance to Enrage to give yourself more rage. So not only do you get the buff of Enrage, but you also now get the rage generation. And I found that this combo went really well. Now, if you're going to take Furious Slash and you're no longer going to be using Whirlwind, you would then want to switch to either Dragon's Roar or Bladestorm. Now, of the two, I think I like Dragon's Roar more. I think Bladestorm's technically doing more damage right now, but I just found the lockout to be difficult. You're basically trying to weave it in between like a 3.9 second cooldown and then a 2-charge, 7-second recharge. Again, that could be less if you're taking Inner Rage. So in this row, this is obviously all AoE. I personally just like the Whirlwind. It also helps in cases where you are passively cleaving, generate even more rage from that. And again, this I think works really well. So again, if you're taking Meat Cleaver in the 45 row, you're going to want to pick one of these two. Again, I think it's personal preference. I think Sudden Death is a lot of fun because, again, I think the extra executes are very nice. They do good damage. They do generate rage for you. Enrage is very useful as well if you don't want to be worrying about hitting another button for a large part of your rotation. That's fine as well. But again, I do think Fury Slash almost feels like what they want. It just feels more in line for that single target damage. But again, I was finding different builds having relatively similar competitive damage. So again, that's a 90 row. In the 100 row, you have Reckless Abandon. So again, your Recklessness cooldown generates 100 rage and lasts 4 seconds longer. So I'm going to talk about Anger Management and then talk about these two in comparison. So Anger Management, for every 20 rage you spend, reduces the remaining cooldown on Recklessness by a second. So I'm just going to talk about these two for a second here. So the math works out like this. It's very simple. If you're taking Reckless Abandon, it's a 1.5 minute cooldown, flat, and will last for 14 seconds. So again, take a 3-minute window here. 3-minute window, you're going to get 28 seconds of this uptime. All right? Take Anger Management now. So Anger Management, because of the spending, and again, especially with Endless Rage, giving you more rage, Carnage, reducing the rage cost, but allowing more Rampages to be used. And remember, the only time you're really spending rage to reduce the cooldown with Anger Management is with Rampage. So being able to reduce that and use it more frequently outweighs the ability to use it less frequently but get more done. And so because of this, you get basically, in a worst case scenario, you get a 1-minute cooldown. I was actually having less than 1-minute cooldown. I got to the point where I was actually able to get 4 of these in 3 minutes. So again, that's pretty good. But worst case scenario I was finding was about a minute. You do the math on that. A minute cooldown in 3 minutes, that's 30 seconds. So worst case scenario, you're still 2 seconds longer. Now again, you lose out, of course, on the 100 rage generation, but I found that just wasn't as beneficial. Yes, it gives you a Rampage basically for free, but I just didn't find that to be as useful. And in general, the Anger Management gave me more uptime on that buff, which, especially again, like I said, when I had 4 of them in a 3-minute window, that was definitely a lot better than the Reckless Abandon. The other talent here is Siegebreaker. So again, 30-second cooldown that increases your target. Does damage and increases the damage done by 50% for 10 seconds. It does generate some rage. This is okay. I found in general that Anger Management was giving me more damage though than Siegebreaker was. It's not a bad talent. It's relatively competitive, but I just preferred the Anger Management. I preferred getting more Recklessnesses and then just go to town. All right, so I'm going to show, again, 2 different rotations here. I'm going to show one with the Meat Cleaver and then Sudden Death, and I'll switch another one up and do a Furious Slash with maybe Dragon Roar, just so we can kind of see the differences. They're very subtle, but the slight differences here. All right. I'm going to try to charge in Recklessness right away. And again, the idea here is simply just, oops, got kind of lucky here on my execute procs. Very lucky on my execute procs. So yeah, it's very busy spec, very hectic spec, which I like. Again, it's not a challenging thing. You're not kind of thinking. It's kind of like whack-a-mole in a sense, where you're just kind of hitting what is available. Again, if nothing's available, you hit a Whirlwind. So again, I've gotten very lucky with my executes so far. So again, my damage is definitely above what I would normally be expecting at this time, but it should even out in the end. But again, I'll show you the damage meters from this afterwards. I want to get about 3 minutes in, and then we'll kind of see how it goes. But yeah, the idea here, of course, is you are hitting what's available, basically. Okay, there's Recklessness again. And again, I'm able to get about 2 to 3 of those inside that window normally, which is quite nice. Yeah, the executes have kind of calmed down a bit here. But still, this damage is actually very competitive to what I've been seeing with some of the other builds. So yeah, this is definitely going to be one of the viable ways to kind of play. And again, it does have very nice kind of passive kind of AoE with Whirlwind kind of just being there in there as a filler. Again, it also has some benefit. You will be generating more rage, more targets you hit, as well as the fact that you can enrage. And with the 15 row talent, Endless Rage, you're getting, again, 6 rage, or again in Recklessness, you're getting a bit more than that. Now, you can sometimes get a little bit luckier here with your, there you go, with your Raging Blow resets. That's actually really good. Yeah. So that is, again, this one basic playstyle here. So let's actually take a look at some stuff here. Alright, so as you can see here, Rampage, far and away the highest damage here. Again, you have both offhand and main hand execute damage. Like I said, I got a bit lucky there at the beginning. Raging Blow, Bloodthirst, Melee. Again, you can kind of see the damage breakdown here. Auras, however, though, this is the kind of thing that I was looking at. So again, this was a 2 minutes 26 seconds, and I had 3 Recklessnesses. So again, I was heading again to about 4 in the 3-minute window. So you can see the value of that talent, again, of the anger management talent, especially I think with Endless Rage, helping that rage generation a good bit. Alright, so like I said, I wanted to show the one other kind of idea here, which would be Furious Slash. Again, I'm going to take Dragon Roar here just because it's, again, I just don't like the lockout of Bladestorm. Bladestorm might be better in the end, but especially, of course, AoE is definitely going to, I mean, they both are AoE abilities. I still have a feeling that Bladestorm is going to be a little bit better, but alright. Oops, I am messing up already. So again, the idea here is you're going to be moving Furious Swipe in there now instead. Yeah, I kind of messed up that rotation in the beginning. That's alright. Alright. In the groove now. So yeah, so now basically again, instead of Whirlwind, you're now using Furious Swipes. The upkeep is not a thing basically. You're going to have enough downtime in your rotation to be able to keep that up. It's a 15-second duration on that haste, so it basically stays at 3 stacks or 6% haste the entire time, which again is quite nice. You feel it a bit for sure. Again, I just wish there was a better talent to take other than Bladestorm or Dragon Roar, just because neither of them really feels great in a single target environment. And it's kind of a shame, again, that Furious Swipes, which just seems to be the single target, right? It's like, it's kind of counterintuitive to be using, Whirlwind in a single target kind of build. It's nice for, again, that passive cleave, but it's not the most intuitive thing. So it makes sense to have an ability that does a bit more damage and again is focused on single target and again gives you that nice kind of stacking haste buff. But yet you just kind of lose out, I think. I think if there was a more competitive talent there in that AoE row to be able to put into the rotation to make sense here, that would actually be a bit nice. And it goes back to one of the things that I mentioned on a previous video, which is I almost want to see, instead of having like an AoE row, I want to see the talents kind of mixed up a bit more. Where in a row you maybe have, in your AoE rows you have 2 AoE and 1 single target, and in what would be your normal single target rows, you have 2 single target, 1 AoE. Where again you can have this kind of choice between AoE and single target, but you never have that feel of, okay, for raiding, this row is kind of pointless. I'm just going to take the different flavor of AoE that I'll probably never take, and again, you're passively going to be taking whatever does the most damage for you in a raid environment, instead of actually getting to pick a talent that actually directly kind of improves. And again, it can actually then really lead to different builds based upon different environments, right? For example, if the best AoE talent in that row for Mythic Plus is the same one that's best for raids, you're never switching. But again, if there was a talent in that row that was very clearly better for raiding than it was for like Mythic Plus, you would then take it. So it would allow some variation of your build from time to time. So again, this is the idea with this build. Again, same basic premise here. Again, if you could also, of course, take Bladestorm instead of Dragon's Roar. Again, I do think it's slightly better damage, but I just don't like the lockout. I feel like I'm wasting my life away. All right. So again, very similar damage, a little bit lower, but again, I kind of messed up the beginning of the rotation. All right, let's talk about stats now. So, scrolling down. So crit here, of course, crit's going to be valuable in the way that it normally is, going to help increase that damage there. You already get the buff to crit from recklessness a little bit here, so again, that's nice. Haste, I think, is going to have a lot of value, or not a lot of value, but it's going to have some good value because, again, you have things like Bloodthirst and Raging Blow both being reduced by haste. Again, haste also increases your swing timer, so you're generating more rage with your auto attacks. Again, that also, of course, is going to help with rage generation with rage spending. So again, the more rage you generate, the more you spend. If you take the talent that I was mentioning, recklessness is just going to get shorter and shorter on cooldown. So there's definitely kind of like a synergy along those lines there. Again, you also get the buff to haste from Furious Slash if you choose to take that. Versatility, again, it's going to be straight damage improvement. Again, it's going to really matter on how this scales. And then Mastery, so actually let's go back here. So again, it's really going to come down to this uptime on Enrage. And again, it was pretty decent here. So again, on that last run, it was about 68% uptime on Enrage. On the one previous to that, we had, our Enrage uptime of, again, about 78%. So again, a little bit better there. Which makes sense because, again, the Whirlwind upkeep on Enrage is very valuable here. So you can kind of see different builds might value Mastery differently because, again, Mastery's value is going to be wholly tied to the uptime of Enrage. So, yeah, I think that that's going to be the kind of idea of Mastery value is going to be how much uptime of Enrage do you have. And, again, it's going to find this place where it's going to settle into this is where its value is going to come from. The more uptime you have in Enrage, the more valuable Mastery is going to become, because again, it's just increasing your damage by a flat amount in that window. So yeah, I think all the stats again are going to be somewhat interesting. I think again, if anything, crit would be the least interesting. There's not the kind of crit synergies that we of course saw with Arms Warrior, with the crit increasing your rage generation. But I still think that again, there other than crit, there's going to be a good interaction with things like haste and mastery for sure. And again, crit and versatility are going to basically be very similar. They're both just damage increasing in different ways. One is consistent, one is a bit more sporadic with the damage increasing. All right, so overall thoughts, kind of summary here. I like Fury Warrior. I'm not going to lie. I think that I definitely preferred over Arms from a playstyle. That's not to say that Arms is going to be worse. It could be better DPS. I'm purely talking about how fun it is to play for me. I like the kind of passive AoE that Whirlwind kind of gives you in that build. I also, again, think that there's a good bit of AoE ability, again, in this spec. Probably, how do I want to phrase this? Its burst AoE might not be as good as Arms is, but again, with the ability to take some of these, again, AoE talents like Blade Storm, or even Meat Cleaver and such. Again, Meat Cleaver in particular is nice because, again, that ability to whirlwind and then causing your next target to do AoE damage is quite nice. But again, they're not going to have that sweeping strikes type ability to kind of just pump a bunch of damage into targets. But they're kind of consistent over time AoE. I definitely think is going to be very, very good. So again, Mythic Plus, where it's kind of consistent AoE damage you're looking for, definitely going to have value there. Single target, again, the arms damage, and this was very similar. Again, I can't test execute window. Hard to tell, but I enjoy the playstyle. I like the more active. I kind of had downtime in Arms. I have no downtime in Fury, and I like that kind of fast gameplay where you're trying to like catch up with yourself almost in a lot of ways. It's really fun, but not like cognitively challenging. It's much more of a reflex. There's definitely some decision making in the spec, but it's much more of that Fury kind of like idea of hit this, hit this, hit this, hit this, hit that. You're not really thinking about, okay, I'm going to do this, and then if this happens, I'm going to do that, and if that happens, I'm going to do this. You're not really planning out your moves as much as you are what's available, what can I hit. Again, there's some slight priorities, of course, but it's much more of a, if Rampage is available, hit it. If Raging Blow is available, hit it. If Bloodthirsty, hit it. If not, Whirlwind or Furious Slash, again, in the execute window, execute when that's available. That's going to be your best button to hit in that window. And then, again, of course, Recklessness on cooldown. So again, I do really think that it's a pretty straightforward gameplay, but yet is one that even somebody who's new can kind of pick up and start to play really well. So again, I think that's quite enjoyable. Plus, can't forget, Warriors do bring Battle Shout, one of the few kind of raid buffs. Definitely going to have value to the raid there. If you like this video, go ahead and give me a like. If you dislike the video, go ahead and give me a dislike. What are your thoughts on Fury? Fury versus Arms, put it down in the comment section below. If you want more content like this, please go ahead and subscribe. I'm going to be following this up, of course, with my likes and dislikes for each spec, followed, of course, by Monk being the next spec I'm going to take a look at. Probably looking at Brewmaster first, followed by Windwalker, followed by Mistweaver. But again, the first healers can finally be covered here in the next video. Looking forward to that as a main healer. But thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next videos.